Hey, WoHos. We don't normally do trigger warnings on this podcast. That might change as of this episode. I just wanted you to know that there is a discussion of rape in the context of one of the movies today. If that is triggering to you, you may want to skip that section or skip the pod altogether and just catch us on the next one. But if you're sticking around, thank you, and I hope you enjoy. Welcome to the World of Horror Minisode. This is the cute and dorky cousin of the World of Horror podcast, where we talk vintage and vintage-ish movies in our Midwestern accents. I'm Christina.
And I'm Quinn.
And our mission is to make connections to the main movie from last week. Last week, Mac and I watched the 1973 and 2006 versions of The Wicker Man. Both deal with pagan and pagan-ish cults. And so I thought it might be fun to spend some time talking about a couple of movies about cults we like, MIDSOMMAR and Martha, Marcy, May, Marlene. Hi, Quinn. How's it going?
Oh, hi, Christina. It's going well. Yeah. So here's what's happening in our lives. We turned in grades today.
Whoa, yes.
Yes.
They're in the books.
They're in the books. But if you're like a Quinn, then you left all of your summer prepping to do. So you do not feel really that done. But if you're a Christina, well, you prepped years ago for summer.
I prepped even before I was hired for this job.
Yeah. Well,
I know, but I never feel like I'm done. So even though like everything's in there and it's all loaded for bear, I'm still going to tinker with it until the very, last minute when the course starts. But we have 3 weeks ish until the summer session starts. So you have plenty of time, Quinn. But you're also going to be an aunt for the second time, sometime between now and the next 3 weeks.
Yes, I am. So that makes life a little bit more, what's the word I'm looking for, Christina?
Exciting.
Exciting. But sort of like nerve-wracking as well, because I've committed to, when my sister-in-law goes into labor, I've committed to driving myself down to Charleston real fast to take care of my niece Kennedy, who is amazing, but I am not a skilled caretaker. So I'm a little nervous about that. But the other day I decided all I have to do is keep her alive.
Yeah, really. You need to think of it like that because...
Yeah. And it changed my view.
Did you get to change some diapers the last time you were there?
Yeah, I did. I was really just thrown to the wolves at one point, and my brother videoed me doing it and freaking out and saying, I really need your help. This is a disaster. And he was just laughing. And then he sent the video to my parents, and it is forever memorialized. But it was the first really bad one I did. And, later I found out that I didn't do as great of a job as I thought I did. I didn't think I did a great job, but I thought I did a sufficient job, but I didn't really do a sufficient job. But yesterday when the thought came to me, okay, all you got to do is keep this little girl that you love alive, and you can do that. And I can do that.
There you go.
We're gonna stay alive, and we're gonna watch Pete's Dragon, and we're gonna read books, and I don't know, stuff. So I'm excited. I'm kind of I'm nervous, but I'm excited.
I wonder what she thinks about getting a sibling. I wonder what a person her age thinks that's going to be like. Because I know obviously she's around a 1.5, I think, and she can see the change in her mother's body. And I'm sure they've told her, you're going to get a sister. But I wonder what that's like for a 1.5-year-old person to conceive of getting a sister.
Yeah, I mean, she told me that she's ambivalent, really. No, I know, I can't imagine.
She's like, with climate change, I mean, it really makes you think.
In the crisis, there's a lot of crises going on in this country and all across the world, really. And what planet? We lost a planet. I was like, Kennedy, man.
Wow. Dial it down.
Yeah. Yeah, but she's like the cutest, coolest little person. And she like hides behind people and pretends like she's scaring them. And it's so cute. She's just adorable. Anyways.
Yeah. I actually think that might be a really good age because I think I was 4 when my brother was born and I was pissed. I was like, another one? Like, you've got to be one. Fine. I could accept 1, but 2 other people who are taking the spotlight away from me, I don't like it. So,
yeah. I don't think my brother was happy, and there are a lot of childhood photos with the 2 of us where he is looking at me in a very evil, conniving, omen-like, making a connection to next week, omen-like way. Like, I will rid the world of you, you outlander, and so.
Yeah, but to be fair, they're probably still photos of him like that to this day.
Yeah.
As a 43-year-old man.
Yeah. And I mean, really, it's just recently that he's finally accepted me. So I hope it's a quicker transition with Kennedy.
I'm sure it will be. I mean, it almost has to be.
It almost has to be, really.
And again, I have not met him yet, but I feel like I know him pretty well based on what you told me about him.
Yeah, he's a character.
Does he listen to the podcast?
Oh, no.
No.
I did recommend it to him. I did recommend it to him when he was driving for work to be trained back and forth. And that was like kind of a hard pass for him. But hey, it's maybe not for everyone. I mean, I think many people would like try it out and then say, well, that's not for me. But some people will just say it off the bat. That's what my brother did. He just knew right away it wasn't going to be for him. I didn't even tell him what it was about. So that's where we are. Yeah.
Should we get into it, Quinn?
Yeah, I think that we should. I want to say from the beginning that when I heard that you guys were doing the Wicker Man, fear struck my body because I saw the original in that horror film class that I took in college, and it really affected me and it really scared me. And a lot of those films in that class, even though I had kind of grown up watching horror, a lot of them maybe just like because they hit me at that moment, it might have been just like the right time in my life, but it really, really scared me. And then I did watch the remake and it freaked me out too. I mean, the end of it as well, when I watched it, I think it probably would have been when it came out. And I had so much fun listening to last week's episode, though, and even did look up many of the clips that were referenced with the national treasure, which is, a movie he's in too. But yeah, then I did start also watching the remake with you one day, but we read into a commercial issue where we just couldn't stand it. Well, you trudged through, I couldn't. But yeah, the idea of that sacrifice has always been, a human sacrifice has been something that's both sort of interested me, but it really freaks me out a lot too. So I was kind of excited, and I thought I would watch the original again before your episode, but I did not. And I really thought about it, but I got scared.
Maybe my heart is dead or something, because I just freaking loved the first one. And you had told me that it freaked you out, and I'm watching it and going, why? Like, what is it about this movie that freaks Quinn out? But, I just thought it was delightful. But maybe it's just I'm so much older, and I just knew already that there was going to be a human sacrifice. So it wasn't like a surprise. I just thought it was just a lot of good fun. But then who was it? Matt Morris thought it was so funny that I thought that The Uninvited was funny or fun. So.
Yeah, but no, that movie is so fun. That's the thing. It's like when you catch it and when it hits you in your life, and it hit him at a younger age. So.
And I guess that maybe it's just an individual experience anyway, like how you encounter the movie. So.
Yeah, for sure. And I think certain people have things that they just, if they know it is portrayed in a film, they may stay away from it. You want to announce our first segment?
Yes, I do. So our first segment is called, So, are we just going to ignore the bear then? And that's a quote from MIDSOMMAR or MIDSOMMAR. And that is Quinn's movie for this week.
Yeah. So, yes, MIDSOMMAR. I'm going to go with MIDSOMMAR. This was written and directed by Ari Aster, and this is his second film to Hereditary, which we've talked about a little bit on this show, although not gone into a lot of detail because I can't. But,
not till 2025.
Not till 2025, yeah. Hereditary, I think came out at a moment and really did a great job of I don't know, captivating audiences, but also like horrifying them and maybe like also forcing them to put it away in a place that isn't safe until 2025 to discuss. I don't know. I did see the film with you, and maybe I've told this story before, but it makes me laugh so much. There was like an older couple sitting next to us, and at the end, I looked at them and I said, "What are we doing here?" And they didn't say anything back to me, and that's like it. We're done. But Hereditary, it deserves its own episode, of course, but not for a while, from us at least. But a lot of people loved it because of certain things that he was doing that I think are a little bit of a callback to older directors and older horror films in the way that certain great directors establish their style and really, really root you in suspense. So I think both Hereditary, well, it's completely a different film than MIDSOMMAR, but I think that they both are slow burns for me. And I love a slow burn. I think that MIDSOMMAR doesn't have some of the flashier things that Hereditary has. And I don't mean flashy in a bad way, but I mean, Hereditary does have some jump scares. And while in MIDSOMMAR, there's a lot that I think as an audience we're very surprised about because it's a very different culture that we're looking at. But nothing is like coming out of the bushes, or there's no like head being decapitated from a pole, like there's nothing that we're like, why did that happen? I don't know. But anyways, I am very bad with plot summaries. And I know I haven't even started on a plot summary, so I'm just going to go through points that Wikipedia has presented us with. But this film, again, written and directed by Ari Aster, starring Florence Pugh, the beautiful and wonderful Florence Pugh from last week's Minisode, Little Women. She played Amy Marsh. Jack Rayner, William Jackson Harper, Wilhelm Blomgren, Laura Torchia, Archie Madecki, Will Poulter. It is a 2019 film. It is 2 hours and 18 minutes. And I do apologize for the names I may have just butchered. But so a long film, really. And, I know I read in just the facts on IMDb that the film was greenlit right after Hereditary. So this film starts us off with Danny, who is a psychology student. And in the very beginning, we see her concerned with her sister. We find out very soon that her sister has killed herself in her parents' home and also killed her parents because she piped in carbon.
Harvey loves this podcast, and he just really wants to contribute to in any way that he can. And the problem is he doesn't speak English, but, really can't fault him for that. He is trying his guts out, to express himself, and he just doesn't know how.
Something got him going, but now he's staring at the wall and very lowly growling. So I fear that he is in some sort of fight now with the wall, but I'm sure it has something to do with MIDSOMMAR. So she pipes in carbon monoxide poisons her parents and herself. We know that Danny has this boyfriend named Christian, and he has a good set of friends, a good group of friends. But from the beginning, we see his friends saying, you got to let her go. You got to cut her. This is off. Your relationship's over, but you got to just do it. And he's like, well, I can't just having all these issues. And then this traumatic event happens and he can't do it at that point. So you find out that all these guys, Christian and his 3 friends are all going, they say that they're going to Europe, but they are going to one of the friends, Pele's ancestral commune, the Harga, and it's a celebration that occurs once every 90 years. Josh, another friend, is an anthropology student. He wants to write his thesis on it. And there's another friend named Mark, and he's just going kind of he's going for the fun of it. Christian kind of half-heartedly invites Danny, and she does agree to go. And so I love the way that it transitions from them in the United States to getting on this plane. She goes into a bathroom.
He really disapproves of drug use, and you were just about to talk about magic mushrooms.
Yeah. Come here, buddy. Come here. If I take, he has a cone on right now. If I take it off, he's gonna. Okay, I'm sorry. I don't even know where I was.
You were talking about the transition between the U.S. and Sweden.
That was a dumb transition. It's a cool transition, but okay. So the transition is at one point they're talking about the trip, and Danny goes into a bathroom and she starts crying, and she's having a lot of emotional trauma getting through this, getting past this. And then it transitions in this cool overhead shot to show her in an airplane bathroom, and she is crying. Marcy's itching his back.
The thing I like about Harvey is he just goes for it, She's scratching himself, he just scratches himself, he just goes all in.
Yeah, and he snorts and growls, and it's real.
That's
Feel
a
great.
good thing he's so cute, because it would be pretty gross, but he is adorable.
That's why he is not dead. He is
Yeah.
so cute.
That saved my first son's life.
I have to put the cone back on. I understand that, like, because really, I feel like where Harvey would have been back at the shelter. Oh gosh, cut that out. Okay, sorry, you might have to do some work editing.
It's okay. It's fun.
All right. So then they get there and they're driving in, and let me just say too that this is one of those films that you don't get the opening credit until 12 minutes in. And you
love it.
Much I love that, because it feels disorienting, and it's like it sets you up in a chaotic world where you're like, wait, I thought we already opened this movie. I thought we did it 30 minutes ago or whatever. So I love that.
So wait, so what is happening when the title card comes in?
I think it's right when the trip starts. I could be wrong about that. I got to look into it.
When they get to Sweden?
So.
Okay, so the sister has already died, and there's all this rigmarole with whether or not she's going.
Yeah. So they're driving in, and I just want to note this because there's this gorgeous shot of them in the car, and the camera just flips and turns you upside down in like an 180 degree. And it's so cool, and it's such a cool way to set up a viewer for the idea that they are being dropped into a place that they don't know. And these characters are coming into this cultural event that they don't know, and we'll find out they don't understand. But as a viewer too, you're not really sure what's going to go on. And this sets you up for that ambiguity. And it also, I think, plants a big seed of anxiety. And I think one thing that he does so great in this film is just plant this suspense that just feels heavy. And it feels sometimes like you're just trying to catch your breath. He uses lots of long takes, so the camera doesn't edit. So it's a long take is a shot that goes on over 1 minute, but he's got some really long takes in this. And what long takes can do in a film is create suspense, because you don't take your eyes off the characters. You don't have that sort of, shot transition where you can blink, and it sort of makes you, I think for me, it makes me hold my breath sometimes. So it does for me. It's a great use of suspense. But so they get to this village, and right away they start tripping out. So they have some mushrooms. Danny drinks it in a tea, and that is the beginning of kind of the break in reality, that you don't really get your footing, I don't think, for the rest of the film. Any moment could feel like it is a bad trip, perhaps, or like it's reality. So one thing that's cool about this is it's consistent. It seems to be a cultural thing that they do experiment a lot with these mushrooms. And what Danny sees sometimes is like roots in nature kind of reflected in parts of her body, sort of like becoming one, where she's like seeing the first shot of it is like she's looking at her hands, and I think it's like grass that's like growing from her fingers, and it's very cool. But it keeps happening throughout whenever she drinks anything or takes any sort of hallucinogenic whatever. It happens more and more. And what happens with this character is that she does kind of become more and more in tune with these people, and in the end, you know, she is one of them. But so like I said, it's a little bit troublesome to discern reality versus sort of these like drug trips. But you know, once they get there, they start to realize that things are a little bit off. The first thing that's kind of very major is they witness something called an Adistupa, which is a tradition in the culture which sees two commune elders attempt to kill themselves by leaping from a cliff onto a rock. So one of them successfully completes this. The woman, and the man falls, breaks his leg, and is not dead. So they have to grab a mallet and bash his head in. And so it's very raw, and it is intense to see. And these people, you know, who are just there for this like kind of like love, happy hippie celebration are then, you know, really kind of feel like they're thrown into something they don't understand. And right away, the leader of this community kind of comes over to them and really says, hey, don't be worried about this. This is what we want. You know, this is what happens. This is what folks do near this certain age. You know, we don't want to die slowly. We want to have control over it, which, you know, I think to a viewer, it's like, oh, I kind of get that. It's still really very, very troubling to watch, and certainly for them. And there are two other foreigners that are in the mix as well. And they came with Ingmar. So it's a couple from London, and they are most distressed by seeing this. And they run back to where they're camping, and they decide they're going to go home. So then, let's see. Then we kind of get into this part within the film where we know that Josh is writing his thesis on this community, and Christian kind of like underhandedly decides he's going to write his thesis on it as well. And it just feels really weird. But throughout this, again, Christian and Danny are together, but their relationship is not, it doesn't feel like it has the roots, or, you know, he doesn't seem to care much about her. It's her birthday at some point, and he kind of completely forgets that it's her birthday, although Pele remembers and, you know, gives her a drawing and whatnot. So like their relationship is you can tell as a viewer, oh, this isn't good. And you can tell just by each of their faces too. It's like that, you know, the face acting, the pure cinema stuff. It's great in here too. So this happens, and then the two Londoners are kind of just gone, and it's said that they drove him to the train station and that she met him later. But it's this thing that's like, why would you leave without her? And then there's this whole idea of, you know, Christian wanting to do his thesis on what Josh was doing his on. And it just like builds this seed of sort of suspicion around what's, you know, the folks there and what's happening. Okay, so at one point, Mark urinates on a fence, and it is found out later to be a sacred fence that is, you know, their representative of their ancestors. So a lot of the community members get very angry with him, and he is quickly done away with. And then, you know, at one point we see Josh taking a picture of something he's not supposed to, and then right away is banged on the head with a mallet. But none of this is like, it's all just like, and then that happened. Oh yeah, and then that happened. It doesn't feel monumental because everything is really building up to the end. And the end is really the crowning of the May Queen. And how that happens is that all of the women and of a certain age, I think, in the community or who are invited there, they drink something special that is spiked with something. And they just dance, and whoever is left, who hasn't fallen down in, exhaustion, is crowned the May Queen. And Danny wins, of course, and so she is crowned the May Queen, and they take her off and sort of a parade. But at the same time, this thing is going on where one of the women of the community really likes Christian, Danny's boyfriend, and has been like really kind of planting the seed of their relationship since he got there. And I mean, we can go into what planting the seed means in a minute, but so she kind of they bring him to this cabin, and she is there with her legs wide open, and the whole, like, half of the community is standing around them as well. And he gets on top of her and they have sex while the community is standing in kind of a half circle around them and breathing with them. And, some of them are sort of crouching down and holding her hand. Maya, I think it's her name, her hand. I'm getting growled at.
Harvey's kind of a prude. I mean, Harv, the thing is, different cultures have different ideas about what's appropriate in terms of sexuality.
Yeah, let me tell you, your animal shelter friends probably do a lot of weird stuff. So at the same time, they have brought Danny sort of around the whole community. She meets with some leaders and whatnot. And then Christian, she sees them. She says, "Oh, what's happening there?" And they say, "Oh, that's not for you. Come with me." But she doesn't. And she sees them having sex, and she is just horrified. And, this intense emotional exchange is happening where all of the women of the community kind of rile around her, and Danny is just wailing and breathing and crying and just sucking in any air she can and wailing. And all of these women around her are doing the same thing, so like mirroring her grief. And you've seen this before in the community, especially when the two older folks jump from the cliff and the man survives and he's yelling and the whole community is yelling as well. It feels like they're mimicking him, but you come to realize, well, it's not explicitly stated, that it is sort of this shared grief and shared pain that they're attempting, I think, to facilitate. And it does seem to help her, having these shared moments of like shared breath and deep exhaling and inhaling and whatnot. So the next thing that we see is one of the elders like kind of throwing dust in Christian's face, and it kind of just incapacitates him. And so the next thing that we see is the elders talking about how this has been such a great celebration, and that they've already had 8 sacrifice. No, they've had 4 foreign sacrifices occur, 2 of their own. They need 2 volunteers of their own. And then the May Queen picks the 9th, because every celebration has to have 9 sacrifices. So you find out that, yes, the couple from London, they were killed. Yes, Josh was killed. Yes, Mark was killed. So those are the 4 foreigners who were killed, the 2 older folks on the cliff, and then 2 people volunteer. And they leave it up to Danny to choose who will be the 9th. And the choice is between a random lottery winner from the village or Christian. And he has been like wheeled in because he can't move or speak or anything. And he is just watching this. and he can't say anything. He can't do anything. And she stares at him for a long time. And she kind of looks like kind of featureless. And the next thing that you see is him in this room with the bear who has been slit and the bear's intestines being taken out and Christian being put in inside of the bear. And you realize that she made her decision and she chose Christian to be the ninth sacrifice. So the end of the film is all of the bodies who have been already sacrificed and the two volunteers and Christian in the middle in the bear suit, alive, but incapacitated. And they light a match and there's straw everywhere and the whole thing burns. And then the final shot, well, you do hear yelling because there is yelling from the two volunteers. And then the community yells. And the final shot is Danny. And it's a very close-up, tight shot of her face, which is pretty sullen. And then sort of slowly turns into quite a grin. And so, yeah. And the whole film, there's very, very brief moments of darkness, like literal darkness. The beginning of the film when they're in the United States, there's some darkness. And then in this community at this moment, there's very few hours of darkness. So that also feels, like it's chaotic and it feels kind of foreign. But as a viewer, it's so bright and beautiful and almost so like, I don't know, just it's like it feels like when you're driving in the car and the sun is coming up and you have to put on your sunglasses because it's so bright. And then it's sort of a filtered brightness. And it's gorgeous the way that it's shot with that. And it's also such a cool juxtaposition of the horror that's going on because it's so bright. It's so beautiful. It's a gorgeous place. But there is this tragedy and this horror and, can be for sure, we can say, did they deserve to die? I don't know. But yeah, so it's called a folk horror. And it's kind of like a subgenre of horror films where there's elements of tradition and folklore that we should be somewhat familiar with typically. But, in this one, there's some familiar pieces of folklore, but really, we don't really understand it all because some of it is a very made up thing. But then he also called it a breakup film, which, it's just that you can see it as a metaphor for a breakup for sure. And like the long extended, like the knowing of it not working, but attempting to make it work so hard but it's so obvious, and then the infidelity and then, the end. So.
Yeah, I didn't rewatch it for the pod, and I might have only seen it one time. I'm not sure, but it really affected me a lot. And what I remember the most is, of course, the death of Danny's family. That part is like a punch in the gut, like almost immediately. But the very first trippy imagery, I thought was the best I've ever seen it portrayed. And I'm no expert in hallucinogens, but the sense of the nature interacting with the people and almost like echoing the breathing of people, like the leaves kind of like moving synchronously with the inhalation and exhalation of the people. And then also, like you said, the plants like growing up around Danny. That I thought, I've never seen that done so well. And then when she's crowned the May Queen, there's some more of that like trippy imagery. And I think all the sound drops away except for her breathing. And so that's really emphasized. And so this, that seems to be really important to the director, the sense of like breathing and the sense of like being an organic, experience and being one with nature all seems to be really important to him in this story. And the pictures of her as the May Queen are just so like kind of crazy. Like they're so beautiful, but they're just kind of like nuts at the same time, because she's just really all you see is her face, and then everything else is like plants and flowers.
And it's just like, I want to know how much that weighed. It's just, you can see it on her. And, anytime within this film, I mean, she does hardly smile. We don't see that smile until the end. She's always looks uncomfortable after being crowned May Queen, and for good reason. She doesn't really understand what it means or what's going to happen. And again, like it looks like that thing weighs so much. But I loved the breathing and the nature, and it was these like little clues, like she's getting more in tune with this, and she's and Pelly says, at the beginning, don't you want to feel hell? Don't you want this? Don't you want a home, a community, or something? And one of them, when they're welcoming the foreigners to the celebration, says "Welcome home" to her, which is, it's just a very noticeable thing. And she is looking for that. She just lost everything. She lost her world. And she knows that this Christian thing isn't going to last. Like she's got to know it. She can feel it. And at the beginning of the movie with the guys saying like, oh, she's calling again, man. She needs to call someone else. Then you got to let her go. It's gross. Like, cause she's going through a real experience, and he no longer has the capacity to be that person for her. But it's a shame, because I think in the beginning, at least, she feels like he is that person still. And from those scenes with his friends that he is not. And so he is not doing her any good in this tragedy, in this trauma. And then it just gets exacerbated.
I know, it's really weird. Like, I think Ari Aster said this movie plays very differently, whether or not you're a man or a woman. And but I don't think, I just think it's unfortunate that the two of them, when we meet them, the relationship's over. They just haven't called it yet. But they both know that it's outlived its expiry date. Like, it's done, but they're still in it. And then her family dies, and it's like, well, shit, now I can't break up with her, which I don't know if that's meant to be funny, or like there's a word, like maybe there's like a Greek word or something where it's like funny but tragic at the same time. That's what it feels like to me, where it's like, oh shit, like her family died. Like, you'd never say that out loud, but he might think that, because it's like, fuck, I was gonna break up with her and now I can't. And he's sort of stuck.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to say, like, I don't think he's a bad person. I don't, and all the other guys too, like, I sincerely do not like Mark, and his dumb face and shit. But yeah, he's a typical college guy, and he's not terrible. There's nothing, I don't think he's a bad person. And I don't think that any of them are really. And yeah, like you said, they're at the end of a relationship. So it's hard to judge in terms of like Christian's character. Yeah, he seems like an ass, but from the beginning that they both were done. So I don't know. It's tough.
Yeah, I don't think, and I think that maybe people with more emotional maturity, and I'm not slamming these people, but just based on how old they are and how much experience they've had in life at this point, they really don't have a choice but to continue to go on with this dead relationship. I mean, I would like to think if something like this were to happen, you know, the people who have a little more emotional maturity, they would say, look, you know, we need to end this. It's going to suck. It's going to hurt. It's going to feel unfamiliar and weird. But it's just better for both of us if we just end this. And I don't know how you would do that when she's just lost her whole family. Yeah. If anyone on earth could do that, but yeah, it's just, but then the fact that they go on this trip together and it just like, right. It goes on and on and on.
Like if they don't break up, okay, but don't go on a trip together with his friends. And also, I mean, I think at the end, we're supposed to see, you know, Pele as having brought these people there and having brought the May Queen herself, you know, and then when everything is happening and they're celebrating and it's just like, it's so sunny and just bright and almost blurred because it's so sunny, he goes up and kisses her, and it's an intense kiss. And so I think that people leave thinking that they will be together. And so I wonder how much of it was orchestrated, do you think? Because, I mean, and was it orchestrated because she lost her parents or because of who she is? Like, did he know, did he find her to bring her? You know, I like that idea of like, I want to know that.
Yeah, I like that interpretation, because it really seems like he put this all in, because it's so perfect the way it ends up. And she is the perfect May Queen. And the whole deal that she even won the dancing contest. I mean, she shouldn't have. She's never done this before. But that's right. Sort of that fairy tale idea that, you know, she's so special that she would win the dancing contest, even though she's never done it before.
Right. Yeah. 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 I like, it, you know, I'd only seen it once before. I saw it in the theater and I left really having a definite opinion that I liked it a lot more than Hereditary. But it's such a different film, but then there's like a lot of things I think he's going to be one of those directors that we really can say later is an auteur, and has a real developed style. But what I think is the coolest thing about him is that he is like his films are a pastiche. Like he's not afraid to take things that we know about and like put them together and call it his own and do it successfully. Cause like, I think Hereditary especially, I think like if you asked different people what film they felt like it harkened back to, they would have a number of answers. Like I see Rosemary's Baby, you know, I don't know. It's been a while since I watched that, but I remember hearing people describe it as it's this movie meets this movie meets this movie. And you could for sure see that there, but he put them together in a beautiful, like postmodern way and made it his own piece of art. And with this one, so much Wicker Man, you know, and just like so many other films too, just being, I think, put together and but put into a style that he also deserves merit for being original. You know, his style and those shot choices, which are cool and unique, and I don't see them very often, and I just like drooled over some of them. But it's kind of cool to see someone that is not afraid to say, yeah, there's these great films and these great stories, and I might take a couple pieces of something here and there, but to see it done in a way in which you see something completely unique is, I like it. I think that's cool. I love that.
Yeah, I like it too. And it seems like both of these movies, Hereditary and MIDSOMMAR, have had cults in the background or the foreground of them. And I wonder if he's going to continue to explore that or not. But in the first one, we had sort of the, oh, I don't know, dark hall with like, I don't know, dark robes, kind of mysterious cult members idea. And here we have that folk idea of people from a different culture doing, very weird to us things, but doing them in this sacred way of worshiping nature and making sure that, I don't know, the harvest continues or whatever it is that they're doing. We don't get it as Westerners, but we see that there's like something going on in their worldview.
Yeah, and I think what made me walk away feeling like I liked MIDSOMMAR better is because I did feel like I understood the why of it more, even though I don't understand the details of it. There was just a little bit more exposition there, and in terms of I don't know, it just felt like an easier buy for me to see a completely different culture embrace these traditions, because I understand that, just having read about that and seen films about it, and great short stories like The Lottery. Like, I understand that notion better than what comes out of Hereditary. So maybe I guess I'm more comfortable there. That's not to say that Hereditary is worse or better or whatever. I think that I'm going to come back to it years later and think, wow, like, why didn't I just grapple with this sooner? Because it's amazing. But, it can also be said that both films feature naked old folks.
Oh, yeah.
Which is something that I like to feature in my film classes. I will. Side note, one semester, I don't know how I got on this path. It wasn't conscious, but I showed my students, they were so into horror. I let them pick the genre early on in the semester, and they were all like, oh, we got to do horror. So I ended up showing them maybe like, I think it was like five out of maybe like 15 films where there were naked old people. Like, I showed them The Shining, Baby, I showed them The Witch. Oh my gosh. And it just got to a point where I was going to show another film, and I was watching it beforehand just to like get my notes down. And then naked old people, I was like, oops, I can't do it again. Like, I don't want that to be in my evaluation.
And that's your reputation at school. She's cool, but she makes us watch these movies with naked old people in them. Oh my gosh. I don't know why that is so disturbing. Like that witch in The Witch, when she kidnaps the baby. She's disturbing. Like, she has a disturbing body. I mean, no shade, but it's disturbing to see her.
Yeah. And the woman in, The Shining is decomposing.
Yes.
Complexion, and also like toothless then, with very little hair, doing a very scary old lady laugh. It's
yeah, so that's an interesting thing about this cult in MIDSOMMAR, where they basically say, when you reach this stage in life, we choose to end our own lives because we don't want to become feeble and sick, and we don't want to die like that. We want to die where our mental faculties are still intact, and we're still here. We don't want to die a shell of who we once were. So I could get behind that idea. I'm not jumping off a cliff, but I think it's a fine idea. I've always felt like we should have the choice, but Yeah, I would freak the fuck out if I saw that in real life.
Right. I
Oh,
remember though
no.
when I saw it in the theater and then the explanation from the elder of the community, I was like, I got it. I got it. I got it. I was like right on board with it though, just with what you're saying too, but yeah, when you see them use the mallet
Oh,
on the
it's
man's
awful.
head, it is truly, I mean, again, it's not a jump scare or anything like that, but it is a truly intense, horrific scene.
And it's funny because if this is like a homage to Wicker Man, I mean, there's nothing in the original that seems all that disturbing to me, but I'm looking at it through my eyes in this time period. I'm not looking at it in 1973 eyes. But what I'm saying is, I don't think there's anything that disturbing in that cult. I mean, it's all about fertility and sex and, rejuvenation. And yeah, so what? They're having sex outside and the children know what a phallic symbol is. But that doesn't disturb me personally. It might have disturbed my mom or somebody who was watching the movie at the time. But that doesn't, I mean, nobody's jumping off a cliff in that movie. But Ari, obviously, dialed it up to 11 for his movie. But
Yeah. Yeah. And his, like he's on point with those visuals all in throughout the film. We've talked about the hallucinations that she has and sort of becoming one with nature, and they are just gorgeous. So, I mean, it's understandable that the flip side of that is true gore.
yeah.
And it is. And we see that too with the other folks who are or who are killed.
Yes.
And done with their bodies, and it's just, I mean, it's not something like everybody doesn't get treated the same way, but everybody is treated in a way in which it's completely disturbing.
And I think what might be kind of disturbing to us as Americans is the fact that we're in this culture where the individual is celebrated, and in a cult, that's not what's happening. In a cult, what's happening is what's good for the group and what's good for the community. And so it could feel uncomfortable to downright disturbing, depending on what we're talking about. But it just occurred to me that could be why, even in the original Wicker Man, where the tension is between Christianity and paganism, that it's so horrifying to the cop, because he doesn't want to be sucked into this system where he doesn't have the relationship between him and God is obliterated by the community's relationship, to each other. He's just a piece in the puzzle, and it's not, and I get it. I finally get it. That's disturbing. Because I mean, and even Christian in this movie, he's not screaming or anything because he's completely paralyzed. We see his eyes though, and he's terrified because he knows it's curtains for him. That's it. He's done.
And I mean, his fate is the worst. I think I don't even understand, like, I don't know what it would be like to be put in a bear carcass. I've seen films where people are burned alive, and I think about that and I think, what would that be like? And I don't have any capacity to understand that, but like being put in a bear carcass, for some reason, that I think is going to end up on my list of no's. It's like, it just feels
it's pretty awful. I mean, even just the picture of him with the bear head, you can see the gore like around the edge of the bear fur that's like touching his human face. It's awful.
Yeah, and of course, our segment title ties to that, because right when they get into the village, there's a cage in the middle of the village with this bear. And
yes.
so we're just going to ignore that. And, Haley says, "Oh, it's just part of the ceremony."
Well, not only that, like I haven't watched this like on, on DVD or in any way where I could like stop the frame, but apparently the whole movie is laid out in like there's like a quilt or something, like the whole story is like laid out. So if you just go frame by frame, you can basically see the whole movie in the very first part. And, she has a picture of a little girl and a bear in her apartment. And so there are plenty of clues.
Yeah, and maybe those hints really do develop the idea further that she was always meant to go. And Pelly was always meant to be the one that gets her there.
I feel like it's got to be I think that's the correct interpretation, because otherwise we don't have a story. I mean, what, Christian goes with the village girl? I mean, I don't know. There's no alternate story to me, but that could be a problem with it too. If you wanted to criticize the movie, I think if it has to be one certain way, I don't know, that could be a criticism, because not everybody loved this movie. A lot of people thought that he ripped too much off of other movies, and so that it was derivative and exploitative, and not everybody was on the Ari Aster train. But
yeah, and I understand that. I do. I really, because I see it, but I like it because I think he did it successfully. I mean, I haven't thought about it because I don't think I ever see it done so well. But like, I love the idea of like picking these little pieces of beauty and gold and putting them together with your own perspective. And I don't know, I really like that. I think that, I don't know, I'm going to start thinking about other people who have maybe done that. I know, I think Tarantino does it with genres, and I like that.
Yeah, I think he's got a lot going on with him, and I'll go to his next movie, whatever it is.
Will you?
Yeah.
I sent you a screenshot of what it was, though.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and you hang on, I gotta look it up because you said, I was like, I'm in.
Oh, you said it was 4 hours with Joaquin Phoenix, like as a waking nightmare, and I'm like, no, I'm not interested. I'm interested in some of that, but I'm not interested in 4 hours, of that.
Of a waking nightmare.
I can't take 4 hours of Joaquin, and I can't take 4 hours of Ari Aster.
Yeah.
Although, like, what isn't that like the director's cut is like 4 hours, I think.
I think it is very long, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, just a couple of like cool pieces of trivia, and then I think we should probably move on. Despite the film taking place entirely in sunlight, it does not contain one shot of the sun. The film's trailer contained one shot of the sun. A shot of the sun has been reinserted in the director's cut. And we've referenced this already, but didn't really go into it. We don't really have to go into it, but during the meal where meat pies are served, Christian has a glass of reddish juice while everyone else has a yellow juice. An image earlier in the film suggests that this may be because his drink has been spiked with menstrual blood. And also later on, when he is eating something, he pulls a hair out of his mouth. So I know that this is a tradition that has roots beyond this film and in history. Yeah. In different areas of the world and whatnot. But not being an expert on any of it, I don't want to go into it further. Have you heard this?
No. Okay.
I'm going to look it up. Last piece of fun fact that I wanted to discuss, which is not super fun, but it's cool. During the sacrifice at the end of the film, the two folks that are from the village who volunteer for the sacrifice are Ingmar and Ulf, and they're given dew from the yew tree. And as they're fed the dew, Ulf is told, feel no pain, and Ingmar is told, feel no fear. As the building burns and the fire inches closer to them, Ingmar looks at Ulf with intense fear, and Ulf gazes back before the fire engulfs him, and he starts to wail in pain. So this could possibly indicate that at the last moment, both Ingmar and Ulf realize that everything they've been told is a lie, but are unable to do anything about it, unfortunately, die without being able to warn the others. Or it could be that perhaps their yew tree just got mixed up. I don't know. But it is an interesting moment when you do only see one of them wailing. And then it goes out to a cut of the folks outside who then are, doing the community wails and stuff as well.
I think when you are in a cult, you're asked to deny your own experience. And in this scene, it seems to me that when you're told to feel no pain, even though you're being burned alive, it's impossible. There's nobody who could be stoic in the face of that. And even if you wanted to be completely calm and completely go with it or even embrace the pain, I don't think that it's humanly possible to do that. Even though they're asking you to do that. So it could just be that, or it could be, yeah, this is all bullshit. And the director is cluing us into that, the cult, even though it seems like a lot of it really seems beautiful, in the end, it really all is a bunch of nonsense. And when it comes down to it, killing people is not cool. And it denies them, obviously, their experience and their humanity. And so I'm not sure. I think you could read it in a lot of different ways. But to me, that's the way I took it, that he didn't think somehow it was going to be that painful. And then obviously it was.
Yeah. I agree. I think that when you join a cult, you are asked to suspend your own, I guess, common sense too.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah. And again, one other thing is that I really loved the communal, and I mentioned this before, but the communal breathing and grieving, and I like that a lot. I thought that was beautifully done. I've never seen it done before, and I've never even heard of the idea. So I really liked that. Once I got over the fact that they weren't mimicking the wails of pain,
Mm-hmm.
that it was we are also experiencing that, and how much you buy that in this scenario. We don't have to buy it that they are really experiencing that in any capacity, but the idea of being there for someone and trying to impart empathy and trying to be there with them at a very low point and kind of sink into their experience. To attempt to do that, I think, is really cool. It's a really cool piece of a slice of humanity that I think is neat. So I don't know if this is something that is more of a common occurrence in different cultures, but I love to see that, and I thought it was unique.
Yeah, that was a very good way of showing that idea that we're all in this together and we're here with you. And when she's crying, I think it's in the trailer, people have probably seen this image where she's screaming and there are all these women around her also screaming. And the idea that she's going through this heartache, but they've got her, they're with her. And it is a kind of a beautiful idea. I don't know. I would imagine it does occur in some cultures, obviously not in ours very much, but it's really cool to see that. Sorry,
yeah.
Did you say?
I said we're heartless monsters.
Yeah.
But that idea of them having her also ties back to what Pele says in the beginning, don't you want to feel held? And,
right.
And that is exactly what, an imagery matches of that.
And that's exactly what she doesn't have in her own culture. Obviously, like, she doesn't have any family left. And then the only people she does have left are her boyfriend and her boyfriend's friends. And they're not holding her, except in contempt. They're not holding her in love.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's move on to our next segment. Death is Pure Love. And that is a quote from Martha Marcy May Marlene, which was written and directed by Sean Durkin and stars Elizabeth Olsen, John Hawkes, Sarah Paulson, Hugh Dancy, Bradley Corbett from Funny Games, and Chris Abbott from It Comes at Night and Possessor. So we have a lot of scream queens in this movie. Sarah Paulson, obviously, from all of the American Horror Story shows, and that movie Run recently. I think she's, thumbs down from Quinn. I didn't watch it. I'm not a huge fan of Sarah Paulson, but I think that Sean Durkin is. A lot of people love her. She's just not my favorite. This movie's from 2011. It's 102 minutes. I saw it when it came out, and I think I was still getting DVDs in the mail from Netflix. And there's a short movie that Sean Durkin made I think it's called Mary Last Scene. And it's actually a prequel to this, and it's maybe 20 minutes. But I was waiting for it at the end of this movie. And of course, it never came because it's a whole separate deal. But the Mary Last Scene movie is a movie about how people get into a cult. And this movie is about how this woman gets out of a cult. What I like a lot about this movie is it's completely ambiguous whether or not what she experiences after leaving the cult is happening or isn't happening. But it opens with Martha. She leaves very quietly in the morning. Her clothes are dirty. She's got bruises all over her body. She calls her sister, and she's shaking, and her voice is quavering. And her sister asks her, "Where are you?" And she says, "I don't know." But her sister comes and gets her. There's about a 10-year age gap, I think, between her sister Lucy and Martha. And she goes to stay with Lucy and her husband, Ted, played by Hugh Dancy, at this very nice house on the lake in Connecticut. So the story is told in flashbacks. Now, Martha never tells Lucy where she's been for the last 2 years. And Martha has had a history of disappearing, never for this long, but she has had a history of disappearing before. There's something about the relationship between Lucy and Martha that is strained. We don't really know a lot about what has happened, but we do hear Lucy say that she is the only family left. So she feels obligated to take care of Martha. And all Martha says is that she had a boyfriend, and it ended badly. And so, this is why she needs her help. Martha acts strangely. At one point, she crawls in bed with Ted and Lucy while they're having sex. It's very odd. She just goes, in this darkened house into the bedroom and lies down in bed with them. And when they discover her, of course, Lucy's like, what is wrong with you? Like, what are you doing? this isn't normal. This is what is wrong with you. And Ted is even more upset than that. But we get a flashback where Martha was accustomed to having sex with other members of the cult all together in the same room. So we understand that, but of course, Lucy and Ted have no way of knowing. That's what's in Martha's head. Martha also dives into the lake completely nude, and Ted's in the water, and he just says something sarcastic like, interesting swimwear, because he has no way of understanding why she's behaving this way. Martha calls the cult, but she hangs up as soon as somebody answers, using the code name Marlene Lewis. So we get all these flashes about what the cult was like. It did have a charismatic male leader in John Hawkes. Everybody in the cult is assigned a different name by him, which I think is a pretty clever way of showing us, in a very, efficient, that's my word, efficient way, how their identities are left behind. The old self is left behind. They're given a new name. And, but it's odd. Like, what's her name? Julia Garner shows up at one point in the movie, and her name is Sarah. And he goes, oh yeah, Sally. So it's just an automatic thing that he does where he, assigns them a new identity. A couple of disturbing events that we learn in these flashbacks. The most disturbing probably is when Martha is raped by the cult leader. I'm not sure if you want to watch this movie if depictions of rape are upsetting to you. This is a pretty disturbing scene where she has been drugged, and we just see her waking up to being raped. He's fucking her from behind, and she wakes up, and she's completely confused about what's happening. She's just gaining consciousness, and this is happening. And it's awful. It's a really terrible scene. It goes on for a while. And then later we see her preparing the drink that she's going to give to the new cult member, and saying to her, Julia Garner, saying to her, enjoy this. This is the first time. Basically, this is your initiation into the cult, so enjoy it. Another really disturbing thing is, to get money, the cult members break into rich people's houses. And in one of these instances, the homeowner confronts them, and they have this confrontation, and he's like, well, if you guys haven't taken anything, just go, just please leave. And they're like, yeah, that's cool, except we don't know if you're going to call the police or not. And he's like, I won't, there's no reason to, you haven't taken anything. And there's a cult member who's standing behind him who stabs him in the back and ends up killing him. And so there are all these instances where we can see how Martha has become completely traumatized by her time in the cult. Although there are moments where we see her crawling into bed with the cult leader, Patrick, and, having, times of real communion with these people. But she does decide to leave. And the post-traumatic stress is so intense that Martha thinks that the cult leaders are coming to get her from Ted and Lucy's house. Now, that's where the film does a really great job, because we as viewers aren't sure if that's actually happening or if it's just in her mind. But Lucy and Ted host a party at their home, and they have a bunch of friends over. Martha is really nervous. She feels out of place, and she imagines that the bartender is one of the former cult members. And she has a sort of mental breakdown, starts screaming at him, telling Ted and Lucy, they're coming. We have to leave. You don't understand. We all have to leave. And so Ted and Lucy decide to take her to a psychiatric facility and have her committed. That last scene is interesting because there's a car behind Ted as he's driving that almost tries to run him off the road. Ted confronts the driver, and Martha just keeps looking back out the back window of the car. And so it may be that cult members are trying to abduct her. It could just be some asshole, just got into a confrontation with Ted. We don't know. Up to the very last minute of the movie, we don't know what's going on. What we do know is that Martha can't live with Lucy and Ted. We're not really sure if she's going to be able to live in society. And I thought that was a pretty powerful statement in terms of how this cult has really done a number on her psychology and her emotional life. So it's Elizabeth Olsen's really debut in a way. I'm not sure if it's her very first film, but it really put her on the map. And I think she does a fantastic job. She does so much with her face, and everyone does a really great job in this movie. John Hawkes, he doesn't do anything for me, but I understand that he is very appealing to a lot of people. And I think he's cast very well because most of the people in the cult are in their 20s. He's like maybe 50-ish. So he has that sort of, appeal. He's got life experience. He sings, he makes up songs for people, including one for Martha. And he's attractive, and he's got this sort of, he seems soft, but also menacing in a way. There's another character who's pretty close to Martha who smokes. And the first time he confronts her about it, she's like, I'm sorry. And she's sort of smiling and being demure. And he's like, hey, it's your body. But then when we see him later, he's got his hand around her neck, confronting her about her smoking. But that's just off to the side. We don't see it like full on in the action of the scene. It's just sort of off to the side. So it's there in the background that there's this threat of violence that's sort of, always there. What I like about this movie too is it's all like little pieces that you sort of have to put together. I think it's a great movie about cults because it really shows the psychology of how they get into your head, and even in 2 years, how you can end up being maybe damaged forever because of the time that you spent there. So that's my recommendation for a cult flick.
Yeah, I watched a lot of this movie really recently, but didn't watch till the end, and I don't know why I didn't. So I didn't remember the end. And I honestly, when I watched it the last time, probably got about 3/4 the way into it. And I like what you're saying about the idea that we're not really sure if they are after her or not. And I mean, there's real reason that they would be, because she witnessed this murder, but when I watched it the last time, I don't remember having learned about the murder. So I was more on the side of she was just suffering this, PTSD, very hardcore. So I hadn't thought about that, but then I also I don't know that when I watched it the first time, so I don't know that I ever made the connection that there really is seemingly a connection to the Manson family.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Even with like going to rich people's homes and stuff. And initially it seems like he wasn't interested in killing anyone or taking lives. He just wanted to live this life, where he was adored. And, just like the other side of your idea of John Hawkes, I really do find him enticing in everything that he's in.
Mm-hmm.
But I do agree with you that so much of what he's done, he is like just an interesting character that like I'm very attracted to him because I think I don't know, I think he's just maybe he's a layered person, or that just can't help but come across. But he first entered my radar on Deadwood, which I loved that show so much. But I had never seen him do anything like this. But when I saw this, I was like, he can probably do anything, because he was an enigmatic cult leader. And sometimes when I think of it, I think of him, because I think he did such a great job. And I don't know, I think that Elizabeth Olsen was fantastic in this, but I do think of him before I think of her, oddly, maybe just because a cult leader is larger than life, and kind of transcends even fabulous parts, like her part. I think everyone is really good in this. I like Hugh Dancy, so.
Yeah, he does great, because I think he could be seen as the bad guy, because his response to her behavior is so, he's almost like offended by her. And he asks her things like, so what are you going to do with your life? And she's like, I don't know. And he's like, well, you're like 22. You should probably figure that out now. And at one point he says, this is my 2 weeks a year that I get to spend and enjoy myself. And she's just come into this family at this point. So he's already sort of like frustrated because his expectations have been subverted. He's been looking forward to this 2 weeks, the whole year. And now we get here and we have to deal with this wacko sister. And she does seem to be, I could see how he could see her as, entitled and aimless. And it's like he's working really hard and she's mooching off of their good nature. And yeah, I could see how this time I could see how he could see her that way. But I think sometimes I could see how it would also be easy to just sort of see him as a villain. And there is one scene that, again, I think is sort of ambiguous, where we're not sure if he's making a move on her when she's sleeping or not. Her reaction is completely, a PTSD reaction. Like he's like, relax or something. And she kicks him down the stairs because she's like half awake and she doesn't know what's going on. And then when he's like, what the fuck is wrong with you? She's like, I was confused. Well, yeah, she was confused. It's kind of like how, when she got quote unquote initiated into the cult, she was confused about what was going on. So I'm not sure if that's meant to suggest that he was trying to make a move on her, or she just took it that way and reacted in that way. In any case, they don't mix very well together. They're great foils for each other in this story.
Yeah, and everything with them from shot one, with the two of them, it just has this very heavy feeling of awkwardness. When I was watching this and even just like hearing you talk about it, I remember thinking, just tell them.
I know.
Like, just tell them a little bit. Just say, you guys, I got caught up in this thing and I don't want to talk about it, but I need you to know that, like, I mean, I know that's why the movie is subtle and successful and rests where it does, because she's not telling them. But I still, even when just hearing about it, just want to say, just tell them. They don't understand what's going on. And, like you said, her behavior is taken as one thing. And I agree with you. I think, like, she can be seen as very standoffish or, like you said, entitled.
It's against the rules, quote unquote, to talk about the cult. I think it's really a shame. And we don't really know the backstory between the sisters. But obviously they've had a rough time of it before. And why would why would she even go? Why would she even be susceptible to joining this group? You know, you have to ask yourself, like, where was she coming from at age 20 where this looked like a good idea? You know, so obviously there's a lot of trauma in their story that we don't know about either. We sort of have to fill in the blanks. And I read somewhere that the actors decided what their backstory was, but they didn't tell anybody else. So I think that's pretty cool.
That is cool.
They also filmed it over, I guess, a whole month. They did like 2 weeks at the farm and 2 weeks at the lake house. So that's pretty quick, seems to me.
That's really quick.
Put this together.
So this Sean Durkin made a film. I know you saw, The Nest, but I didn't see it. But Jude Law. I think it got a lot of acclaim. It didn't. I thought it was boring.
I don't think I put it together that it was this guy, but I heard that it was really great because it's Carrie Coon and Jude Law, and you know, what else do you need in your life? But yeah, I thought it was boring. So I might have to revisit it. Maybe I was just having a bad day, but it didn't do anything for me on that day. I think this movie is tough. You know, there are some moments that are very tough, but I think if you haven't seen it or you saw it 10 years ago, I would definitely check it out again because the performances are great. And I think it really has a cool take on cults because we do see the cult, but really, you know, what it's really talking about is the effect that it does have on a person. And I thought to myself, wow, you know, it really did a number on her in only 2 years. There's also just the mind fuckiness of it. Like the quote comes from after the homeowner has been murdered. Like Elizabeth says, I think of that guy all the time. And another cult person says, you know, he's just on a different plane of existence. I mean, I think about him too, but he's not on this plane anymore, but he's on another plane. And so he's still alive in a way. And it's like, no, he's not, dude. He's dead. Like he was fucking murdered. But there's that kind. And then John Hawkes' character says this thing about how death really focuses all your attention on being in the moment. And that death is pure love. That's where that idea comes from. And it's like, that's a mind fuck. That's not cool to say that death is pure love. Death is death. And you took this guy's life, you know, for stuff. You know, that's not okay. And that is a crime. And that's a crime against this man and da-da-da. But, you know, there's not just the violence that happens within the cult, but there's this violence of the mind, you know, that's going on too.
Yeah. Cults are fascinating. I love cults. Like endlessly fascinated by them, and they're all so different. This one reminds me so much of Manson, you know.
Yeah.
And then I think of, you know, the cults you and Mac were talking about, and specifically, I did watch the Heaven's Gate Cult of Cults, and I knew I was in high school when it was happening, and it was on my radar, and I was really fascinated with it. I watched all episodes of the documentary, and at the end of it, I was so sad, and so just like sad and horrified. But also, I didn't understand it. It was way above my head, the buying into this cult. The science, maybe, I don't know. But also the fantasy layer of it. I just didn't understand the foundation of it. But I don't know. I don't know that there has to be a foundation, but a cult like Heaven's Gate needs to have a foundation. A cult like the one featured in this film doesn't need to have a foundation. It's something that seems to just grow out of the need for a narcissist to like have a plateau or a theater, you know. They're scary, but I like to learn about them, and I don't know a whole lot about them, but yeah, I don't know, but yeah, that's such bullshit. The idea that the person's on a different plane, like that's the most beautiful justification of you murdering somebody.
It reminds me of, but it reminds me of what we tell children. Some of us tell children when their pet dies, you know, and it's because we think, you know, a child can't understand it. But I think it's also so we don't have to deal with the pain of them going, what? What do you mean they're dead and they're not coming back? You know, we as parents or adults don't want to deal with that because it's like, that fucking sucks, you know?
Yeah.
And so we tell these little fairy stories that, you know, I think are really to protect us, not the kid.
Yeah.
So, I got a stomach ache. Let's move on.
Yeah.
I just wanted, I won't go into it, but I just wanted to recommend there's a TED Ed out there, which is TED Eds are like animated lessons that teachers sometimes use in their classrooms. And so there's a short one. I don't know how long it is. It's called Why Do People Join Cults by Yanya Lalick. And so she just lists a bunch of things that cults demand of their adherents. And one of them was that expansion works like a pyramid scheme. And we saw that in NXiVM for sure, but also in Scientology. You know, those two really, and maybe they all do, but those two very specifically in like our consciousness seem to depend on this idea that you bring in other people, and that's a way to grow the cult.
Yeah.
And then Insider.com had an article on who joins a cult, and it just said that, you know, people who want to better themselves are people who join cults, either professionally or personally. They want a greater sense of community, but also they're in a state of extreme vulnerability. So this makes sense, especially when you're dealing with like young people, but just anybody really who doesn't feel that strong of a connection to their own community. Yeah.
I think that, you know, while watching the Heaven's Gate cult documentary that's on HBO, I thought a lot about who's joining this. And they had a cult expert, and she specifically addressed that question. And she said, you know, they're really no different than you.
Mm-hmm.
The cult specifically would not want anyone who is not smart or isn't thinking for themselves. They want you to adapt their thinking, but you have to be to some intelligence level to be able to do that. You know, and that made sense to me because I've always thought, oh, I'll never join a cult. But like, I want to better myself personally and professionally. I would love a greater sense of community. And honestly, at this very moment, I am in an extreme state of vulnerability. So like, I guess call leaders come and get me. No, but you know, beyond that, it's not so far off.
Well,
it's not so foreign.
I have a problem in terms of feeling superior. That's a problem that I have. And so when I was looking at a lot of these movies, I'm like, these dum-dums, but they're not. You know, they're people, like you said, who they're not dumb. They want to feel connected. Who doesn't want to feel like they're a part of something, and who doesn't want to feel like they're getting better in some way? And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just that there are groups that can help you with that. And then there are groups that can hurt you, but tell you they're helping you. And that's not okay. So I'm a member of a few 12-step programs, and those have been those have been categorized as cults. And I was like, are they cults? And I decided no. For one thing, there is no charismatic leader. Like, there is no leader at all. These are groups of people who are afflicted in the same way, who want to help each other, to stay away from their addiction one day at a time. That's it. There's no leader. There are no dues. You can come and go. It doesn't matter. No one's going to track you down and drag you back. If you don't want to stay, you don't have to stay. You don't have to bring anybody else into the group. So there are all these ways in which it's not a cult. Although, we do sometimes say things at the same time in a chant-like fashion. You know what I mean? So there are certain words and phrases that are repeated, but I decided no, these are not cults. These are groups that may, even though they've been accused of being cult-like, they don't fit the bill in the ways that these other groups do.
Yeah, but if you were to, like, as a person that was being just dropped off into this universe and you were taken to a Catholic mass on a Sunday, and you knew everything, like, hey, just make sure while you're here that you don't join a cult. Here are all of the ways in which you might know that you're in a cult. Well, if you went to Catholic mass on a Sunday, I think you would probably check off, a good 80% of those points.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, another thing that people do argue. Are religions cults too? Some religions are cults, maybe some cults are religions. But yeah, I think like those 12, the programs, like, my gosh, no way. And I think mostly it's just because, yeah, you're not, the thought of bringing people in kind of makes me giggle, but also like the money, there's nothing like that. Yeah. But
yeah. And
there are types of religions.
Yeah. And I have been to religious services. I don't belong to any particular flavor at the moment, but I have been to religious services where we have been told to go out and bring a friend next time. So it's not that it's never, suggested that we might want to like grow the organization through bringing other people in. But yeah, in the groups that I'm affiliated with, we even have this saying, it's attraction, not promotion. So we specifically don't go and evangelize. If somebody asked me how I don't drink, for example, and then I could tell them, but it's not like I'm going to say, hey, y'all, I've got this great new group you should try out. That would be weird.
It's only $5,000 to join, but then you'll make that fivefold.
Yeah, that was another thing in the TED Ed, that there's a high level of commitment that's asked of the people who join, so if that happens to you, that might be a red flag that you're in a cult.
Right. I think I'm more interested in the cults that aren't like that, like, not interested in joining, but like interested in finding more about, just out of curiosity, because, NXiVM, Scientology, both of those, of course, are fraught with all of those aspects of the pyramid scheme. Mm-hmm. And I guess it's more fascinating to see how people choose cults like the ones portrayed in the two films that we watched.
Mm-hmm.
I was so excited that we were doing cults, and it's been fun just thinking about them and learning more about them. And I have a lot to learn, but
yeah, I went like I often do. I went a little ham, and watched a lot of movies on the topic, and documentaries, but also like fictionalized movies. Like, and that one, The Other Lamb, just kind of sticks with me too. The Other Lamb and Marcy May Marlene both had this thing. In Marcy May Marlene, John Hawkes only, quote unquote, only has boys. All his babies are only boys. In The Other Lamb, it was the opposite. he only had girls. So, just weird that both those movies had that. And I don't know, that must be rooted somewhere in reality, but I don't know where. But I just thought that was an interesting detail.
I'd like to see women cult leaders. Like The Sound of My Voice, that was a kind of cool portrayal.
Yeah.
I'd like to see more of that.
Yeah, we didn't get to talk about that one, but that one really stuck with me too. And the ambiguity in that one too was great.
Yeah.
Next time on the main episode, Mac and I will be discussing the 2 versions of the OMEN. And in 2 weeks, Quinn and I will be back to discuss vintage and vintage-ish movies related to them. Thanks as always for your support, and get in touch via Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, or email. Until then, we have no sign off.